Okay, we're COMP123 and it's week 10, lesson 10, and I think it's part 4 of our little series. And we're talking about controls with Windows and Windows forms, right? So let me just bring this down again. I was looking at this midterm exam yesterday again. Madness. I'm going to have to change that for next time. So let's open up a new kind of project today. So we're going to say new project. It's good practice for you guys anyway. New project, and we're going to go into Windows Forms application. That's the new one we're doing now. So you know two things now. You know how to do console applications, and you know how to do Windows Form applications, these two templates. There's other ones, if you notice, too. And that's why Visual Studio is so good and complete. It's because it can do many, many things. COMP123, and we're going to say this is lesson 10, and this is part 2 in terms of the second build that we're doing. I'm just going to open up a brand new GitHub. GitHub must hate me, by the way, because I just keep on opening new repositories. And you know what I do at the end of the semester, eh? I clean them all up. I just kill them all, right? So all the ones that just for the semester, they're gone, right? But the ones that we use for training and all that, I keep up there. But typically, most of them I just wipe away, right? So it's like I do a big purge at the end of the semester. COMP123, it's almost like spring cleaning. Lesson 10, that's part 2. Okay, and again, I'm going to get the URI, do the regular things here, and go into Team Explorer, changes. I'm going to say created. You guys have seen this a bunch of times now. VS C# Windows Form project, right? And we're going to do the home and unsync commits and throw in our URI in there and publish. So you guys are on the same page as me. Okay. So again, we left off with different kinds of forms and controls yesterday. We're going to go back to this again. And I'm going to repeat some of the stuff I did yesterday because repetition is the mother of learning, as we all know, right? Although you may not think so, it's true. We keep repeating it over and over again. You see it twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then you're like, oh, okay, we've done this before. I know how to do this, right? And it's also a good review from what we did yesterday. So let's do a couple things first. So again, we've got our form before I open up any PowerPoint presentation. What do I need to do here? When I first open my Windows Form application, what am I asking you to do? Best practices, what am I asking you? Neil, what do you think I should do first thing? I got my form.
Change the name?
Change the name, absolutely, 100% right. So I'm going to go into my properties, and I'm clicked on the form, and I need to change the name of the form. Well, actually, not properties, it would be Solution Explorer first. And I'm going to right-click onto the form itself, so form1.cs, and right-click onto it, and I'm going to rename it. And right now, we're going to use other kinds of controls, so we're going to say, we're going to call this new form. Why not? New form, no spaces. Okay, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to refactor, blah, blah, blah? We'll say yes, right? And after we say yes, you notice that there's a bunch of different things. Now, how do I get to code view from Solution Explorer? What do I do? Right-click on new form, and then go to code view or press F7. Those are the 2 ways. You don't double-click. Double-clicking, bad. Avoid double-clicking, right? Because that'll cause you to have an extra event that you don't need to. So it's right-click on the new form.cs file and say view code. And now you have both those things open. And you're going to need these 2 things because as we work towards doing this kind of stuff, you're going to notice that we're going to do some more things here with our lesson. There's Jay. Okay, so that's the first thing. What other things are we going to do here with our form? So I've renamed it. Should I do anything like maybe change the title bar? Like that might be something I want to do right now. We can also change that later on. But again, I'm going to go to properties, and in order for it to change the title bar, I'm going to go to the text field of the title bar, and I'm going to change the form so it says the same name as the form. Something like new form, or like we're going to change this again later on because we're going to make another kind of form. And the start position also is something I want you to change. Whenever you make a new form, just try and remember that I want the start position to be center screen. Okay, it doesn't have to be. I'm not making it mandatory for this assignment. But maybe for the exam, I'm going to say change the form so it starts center screen. And that's just another option. Start position is a property. You set it to center screen, and then that's an enum, eh? Whenever you see some of these pull down menus, pull down options, it's an enumeration that pulls down different options for the properties, a built-in or a drop-down menu. But those same properties, if you want to think about it, think about all the things you can do, really. If you have properties, if you know what the properties of the object are already, and they're all displayed there for you, you can modify them. You know what they are. You can go back and forth between the form view and the code view and code up your form. Okay, let's expand this form a little bit. Hey, let's do it numerically this time. We kind of pulled the handles yesterday. But today what I want to do is I want to mimic a classic mobile phone, right? And I want to change the size. So if I look at size down here, it's right now 300 by 300. I want you to change this to 320 by 480. So it's exactly the size of an old smartphone in terms of viewable area, right? So 320 by 480. Okay, and that's what a smartphone would look like. So we're going to almost like we're mimicking a smartphone app. Okay? Yeah? Okay, let's go back. I'm going to save everything now. And if I run this thing just to try it out, it should appear in the middle of my screen. Here it is. It should say new form. And it should be the size, roughly the same proportions of a smartphone. Right? Okay. Let's go back over now and we'll start off the PowerPoint presentation. Make sure we just hit everything. All I want to do here is just hit all the important piece parts. Right? So that way there's nothing that you're missing. I'm not going to hit every control in lesson 12 or chapter 12. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the most, yeah, you know what? That's another thing I'm going to change. Hold on a second. I'm going to open up the other PowerPoint, the older PowerPoint. Because this PowerPoint messed up my resolution, man. And one day, when my computer feels like it's going to actually fetch, it's not going to happen today. So we're going to go with the PowerPoint that it opens up. How about them apples? All right. So if you notice, last day we talked about, or yesterday we talked about a couple things way back here. We talked about colors and everything else. Oh, by the way, things to know about the colors when we go back to colors and forms. Here we go. Here's my link labels, and adding color. If you notice, I use there's predefined colors, and we changed the form's back color and the form's fore color. But we did this programmatically as opposed to in design time. Again, just review. Design time, right? Run time. Design time is stuff that you code, and you can you don't program. It's all stuff that you do with your GUI designer, that piece, right? Your UI, your user interface design tools, you're just dragging and dropping and changing properties visually, right? And this is great because this is the part of the Visual Studio that I like, visual. On the downside, you have to program everything, any kind of handlers that you're going to respond to any kind of events. We talked about what events are. They're stuff that happens basically in a very high level. It's things that happen when you click. If you click on something, it's a message that gets triggered, right? These system messages get triggered if you click or interact with any control on the screen. So if it's a form, the form itself also, if you move the form, it's triggering an event, right? Now, whether or not you're listening for the event depends on whether you double click and actually create that event handler. It kind of goes hand in hand. It happens automatically. Now, again, from a transferable skills perspective, in most other programming languages, you have to register the event lister first and then create your event handler. Two piece parts. This one, all you have to worry about for Visual Studio is one thing, creating your event handler for now. Okay? So we talked about checkboxes and radio buttons yesterday, and here's an example of a pizza order form that they kind of come up with there, where they have checkboxes, things that you want to do. You use checkboxes for if you want to click several options, right? And then, if you want only one of these options, these pickup, delivery, and dine-in options to trigger, then you use radio buttons. Those are the two reasons from a UI design perspective that you'd use these two different kinds of controls that do pretty much the same thing. They're just selections you're making. And we talked about how to program some of this stuff in the back end. I just did my funky programming stuff yesterday and in my own weird way. Okay, we're gonna go to the picture box now. So we moved on from picture box. Picture box has a few interesting properties. One of them is the image, whatever the image is that you want there, size mode, and there's the click event. So when you click on the picture box, it can do things. The great thing about a picture box is that you can put images in there. The challenge is sometimes you don't want to put the stretch image option. We'll talk about some of these things in the size mode when we drag and drop. It's going to look like a square that appears on the screen, and then you've got to assign an image. And we're going to see there's different ways of doing that. And this is where people get confused. Again, remember, a picture box you're going to need for your assignment number 6 for your logo at the very minimum, because you're going to have to, kind of either create a logo, slap a couple things together to make it look like it's like, that makes sense for the company the fictitious company you're creating, for the form you're making, and then kind of put it in place where it's going to be, right? So here's the picture box, what it's going to look like. Let's try it out. So here's my picture box, or my toolbox over on the left-hand side, and I want to go to on the left. If you notice, there's common controls, and one of them is called picture box. Now I'm just going to kind of pin this to the side here, because again, dragging and dropping when it's not pinned is really challenging, right? So I'm going to kind of take the picture box, and we're going to put it in the middle of the screen here. Now when you put it in there by itself, it just goes kind of a standard size. I want to kind of link it so that it goes almost from one end of the screen to the other. Here it is right here. I'm going to make it so that it's a size that looks like this big for now. Okay. So if you notice, it goes from one end of the screen to the other, or this form that I'm making. Okay. There's a little arrow on the picture box. Do you see it on the top right corner of the picture box? There's a little smart arrow. If you click onto this little smart arrow, you don't have to go to the properties menu, and it says choose image, right? Now if I click this choose image, and again, I just click this little arrow to get that, right? So let me go back. So this little arrow, right? Choose image, and there's also size mode, right? So if you look at it, it says size modes, there's stretch image, normal, auto size, center image, zoom. There's all kinds of options here we're going to explore. But the choose image one is interesting. It says, hey, here's our project resource file, and you see that I have nothing in my project resources right now, but it gives me an import option. So this means that you can't just open up a file from nowhere. It's got to be part of your project, just like any other file is part of your project. Remember when we drag and drop stuff into the project? If you ever do that kind of thing, that's the only way it'll appear in the project. If you try and just, if you just try and drag a file in Windows Explorer inside your project, it won't show up, because it has to be registered as part of the project in the project's manifest, right? The same way we have to register all of our resources before we can use them, especially image resources. Okay, so we don't have an image resource. Let's find one. So I'm going to go up online. Just refresh this one. I'm going to go up online and grab, like a kind of a welcome image, almost like a hello world thing, right? So I'm going to say welcome image, right? Hey, there's a couple of different welcome images here. I'm going to go to images for welcome. I'm trying to keep it clean this morning. Come on. I don't want to put a Walking Dead image or something like that on here. That would be bad, right? Although you probably remember it if I did. So let's choose one of these images that kind of makes sense to fit. That's kind of like a big heart welcome. I don't know if I like that. And we want to try and pick a picture. I don't want to pick an image that's like a drawing, because sometimes that's not going to accomplish what I want. So I want something like an actual image that can shear and cut off, like this one. All right, see how this one is irregularly shaped, kind of like in this rectangle right here? Okay, let's pick this, and we're going to see what the challenges are of using an image like this. So I'm going to pick this image. I'm going to right-click, and again, you can pick another one like this. I'm going to say save image as. I'm just grabbing an image from the internet. And right now, I'm going to just plop it on my desktop so I can have access to it. It's going to be called Welcome Large JPEG, JPG. And it's going to be, I'm just going to plop it onto my desktop so I can find it easily again. Okay, cool. It's there. Now I'm going to just minimize this for a second and go back here and click Import. Right? And I'm going to go to my desktop so I can find this thing. And I'm going to go, here's my welcome large.jpg file. And I'm going to press Open. When I do that, it shows me the image, but look how it's cropped. Right? There's a reason for all this, of course. Right? I'm going to press OK. Right? Okay, do you see a problem with this image? Hey, if I click this image and move it around, I mean the actual image inside of it, this is the picture box. The picture box is a container, right? That's what I want you to think about. The picture box is a container that holds the image, right? That's what it does. But it's not the image itself. The image is data that's being displayed inside the picture box. So therefore, if I go to properties, and if I scroll all the way down, if I notice there's the width and height of my container, the picture box container is 271 by 164 right now. That's what I have. But if you notice, the image property has, if I look through here, it says COMP123, lesson 10, part 2, properties. This is the actual path of the image. Properties.resources.welcome_large. That is the proper name for this image. So if I want to access this image, I've got to use this name. And if I just hover over it, it tells me what the name of the image is, right? Okay, I want you to kind of think about this as we move forward. Okay, let's move this, and I want to change the image now. I want to change the size mode. So if I go auto size, right, there's a problem. What it's going to do is it's going to try and auto size my picture box to fit the image. This is bad, right? Because it's going to kind of push. It just messed up my UI design, right? So I'm going to just undo that. So Control Z, and let's change the other one. So that's what auto size does. It auto sizes the picture box, the container, to swell to fit around my image, the data that's held inside the picture box. Okay, what about stretch image? Okay, this kind of makes it so that it kind of, and sometimes it skews it. See how it's not exactly correct? Let's look at the original image here. See how it's like way over here like this? And now let's go back to the other one. And how it's scrunched up like this. This is bad because this is a skewed image. This isn't real. This isn't the real image. And if you try and put a picture of a person in here, he'll look all fat or skinny or weird. Or like almost like looking at a mirror in an arcade or something like that. Or some kind of circus, right? You don't want this one. This typically we put in here if we really need to stretch and fit something that's more a vector-based image as opposed to an actual picture, right? So this is bad. So that's stretch image. Let's look at center image, right? Center image makes it so that it picks the center of the actual image itself and puts it in there, and that's bad, right? Because then again, we don't have a lot of control of where this goes. Okay, I can click zoom, right? Zoom is cool, right? But the problem with zoom is, if you notice, I got kind of this top section that's empty and this bottom section that's empty. So if I click away, and I run this thing for a second with zoom, right? You don't see the outlines of the box. The box is actually, the picture box is actually invisible. Just the image shows up. So zoom would probably be your best choice, right, to fit this image and other ones in this little area here. But you're going to see that some images might take up more space. It'll swell to the size of the picture box, maximum, and some images might take up less space, which means you got to accommodate that in your design. So don't put anything inside of these borders, right? Otherwise, you're going to get a weird effect. You're going to get your stuff bouncing around. You don't want that, right? You also don't want to align another control, because you can do that, to the actual image itself, the data. You want to align it to the box. And there's ways of doing both things. Aligning it to the actual image itself is way more challenging, so you're probably not going to be able to do it anyway. But this is one thing you can do. You can also turn on some other properties of this thing. Like right now, for example, if I go to properties, I have the ability to turn on a border style. This is bad in some ways for this kind of image. Because if I turn on a border style, and I'm going to turn on my border style for the picture and make it fixed single, right? Now when I run this thing, I get a border with these two borders on the top and the bottom, which can be bad because then it kind of looks like there's something missing, right? So this is something that we have to consider. We have to think about, should I do the border? You know, should I not? These are all design decisions. Let's check out something else. Let's see if I can, instead of my border being fixed single, I want to go to fixed 3D. What does that do for me? And see what that effect looks like. There it is. So it's almost like a 3D, almost like it's like embedded in there, like embossed, you know, kind of into it. And that doesn't look good for me either. So I kind of don't like this design. There are places for both of these things, almost like if you want to drag and drop stuff in there. to make it look like it's a drag and droppable kind of space. That's why you'd probably use 3D. I'm going to take that away and go back to fixed single for a second. And also there's also a back color that you can add in. So let's say you want to make so that there's like almost like a letterbox idea. Well, you would change that to like black or white or whatever it would be. So let's say if I change from a control image type and I want to make it so that it's a black color. Again, there's some system colors you can use here. Or you can go to the web and just choose black. And that doesn't look so bad, right? At least you have a black border and centered, almost like a mat, right? My concern is on the right and left sides where it goes right to the edges, and that might be a bit of an issue. But otherwise, just from a design perspective, I'm saying, you know, when you're putting up your different images, these are the different options. So center image, auto size, stretch, normal, we'll just put it in as if it's centered on the top left corner of the screen. Right, it's the top left corner of the picture box. That's what normal does. And so it cuts off anything that's outside of that area. It truncates the image in our viewable area. That's all it does. Right? Zoom is our best choice if we have an image that's bigger or smaller than our picture box. Okay, so that's one of the things to know. There's also another option. If I'm going to pull up this smart menu again, you can say dock in parent container. If I click that on, and if you notice, it takes up the entire image. Right, the entire container actually fits to the size of my container. It makes it a big image. This also works if you're putting it inside a group box. It's a container, any parent container. So if you put an image in a group box, it'll fill the size of the group box. It's not a bad idea, right? So there's two things. There's the container, the outer container, which would be your parent container or the group box, let's say, or in this case is the form. There's the inner container, which is your picture box that holds the image, and then there's the image itself. So think about the hierarchy that we're talking about here. Okay, so let's not do that. So this is our image. Okay, what if I want to swap images on click? So let's just, you know, I want to create a couple more buttons, right? Maybe I want to just create one button for now, just to make it easy. I'm going to kind of put my button down here. And I'm going to kind of put it next to the image here for a second. I'm going to do a couple things here. I need to do a few changes. One of them is I want to access my button. So my button has to change. I'm going to call this the next button because it's going to say next onto it. Right? So I'm going to go down and I'm going to change my text color from button or text from button to next. There's my next. Right? I don't like that. It's too small for me, and I'm getting blind in my old age, so I want to see a bigger button. Now here's a challenge. If I change the font for the form itself, the whole form, right? There are some bad effects that'll happen. Let me just try that now because we haven't done that yet. Just so you might think, hey, what if I change the font for the whole form? So I go here to my font. I clicked on my form now, and I go to the font for the whole form. And right now it says Microsoft Sans Serif regular 8. That's pretty freaking small, right? I want to make it bigger. Let's say I want to make it 14, and I think that's cool, and I press OK. Well, bam, my whole form like magically changes size too, which is really bad, right? So it modifies your design to fit the new, the objects that are inside of it. This can be good and bad. Now then I'd have to resize this back to normal and resize this again. So I don't recommend you do this unless you have a specific reason for making the whole form change in terms of font size and color. So I would keep this, I'd make it back to normal to kind of undo. And I want to, kind of control each font. Now you can do, kind of set up a certain font size. We can do that font size and style. We can do that programmatically too, right? I can set up some constants, a new class, like we did in the console application, and I can access this class, and it's just going to be a container class for constants that I can kind of access, right? And then from there I can create my sizes, like my styles, almost like a style sheet for my form, right? And that might be better, or contain it in an array, something like that, where I have some fixed constants that I'm using for my font size and color that I could apply to multiple controls as opposed to controlling the whole form. That might be bad, right? Again, almost like thinking about it as a web page, right? And in fact, what we're doing is we're doing UI design. So there's different ways, there's different approaches to this whole thing. And the company you work for will have their way of doing things if you ever work with UI design. Okay, this is cool. I've got I want to change my font for this button to, and again, I'm going to change it to I'm going to keep it at Microsoft Sans Serif, but I'm going to move it to 14 because I'm a blind guy. Okay, so now when I do that, of course, my button has to be resized because my font is bigger than my button. So I'm going to kind of resize my button so it fits my font, right? It says next. And I'm just going to put this in the middle, like where it is right now. I also want to give a name to my picture box, which I forgot to do, right? So I'm going to kind of say, you know, this is kind of says picture box 1, right? I'm going to just call this our main picture box, you know, main picture box. So it's not going to say picture box 1. Anything but picture box 1, please. So I know it's main picture box. I'm going to access this thing, and it's part of our form now. And what if I want to add other resources? So when I click the next button, it swaps images. This goes from one image to the next image to the next image. How do I do that? We're going to figure that out in a bit, if it's even possible to do very easily. It sounds tough, right, when you look at it from the first. You're shaking your head and saying it's tough. It's kind of like that, but the challenge is how do we access the resources in our inside of our form application? How do we do that? Well, again, when you look at to the right, when you look at Solution Explorer, right, you see that there are a bunch of different things here, and one of them you see here where it says welcome large JPEG is inside of automatically has been placed inside of a resources folder, right? This is our actual image if you look at the Solution Explorer here. And I did that because I went to kind of the smart arrow here, that's what this is, and I kind of imported the image. Now you can import images in many different ways. One of them is a drag and drop. You can actually drag and drop into this resource folder, right? That's one way of doing it. I also want to point you to the project menu for a second. Let's go back to the project menu. If I go to COMP123 Lesson 10 Part 2 Properties, right, you're going to see that there's different options here. One of them is resources. If you click on resources, it actually shows our little picture, right? Again, I got there from project, COMP123 properties, and then I got this, I clicked on the option, this on the left-hand side here, this sidebar, where it says resources. And if you notice, you know, it's here. I also have images on there's some tabs in the top here too, right? Let's go to the tabs. I've got an images tab, right? So if I click on the images tab, I can go to strings. So here's our string resources. Why would I want strings in here? Remember we talked about this? Well, this is a great area to put in all of your strings if you're going to do internationalization. Okay, so hear me out. So let's say I want to do a string in here, and I want to call it the next button string. So I'll call it next button string. Okay, and I want to change the button, the value of the button, to say next. That's the value, right? Let's do next button string, and let's actually change that to next button string E for English. Let's do another language, just because I'm a crazy guy like that. We'll say next button string, and we'll say Spanish for S, just to say, so I don't give you all the answers, right? All right, how do you say next in Spanish? Is there a word that we can kind of do? Well, if I don't know what the word is, I'm going to go to Google Translate. How do you say it? How do you say it? Hold on, I'm going to do what you tell me because I trust you more than Google Translate for sure. How? Yeah. Yeah. N is it Norman? Yeah. T. Siguiente, right? Siguiente. Okay, there we go. Next. Okay, so I want to change it. I want to change my button, right? So this is, and I can put some comments in too. I can say Spanish next button, right, as an example. And I can say this the English next button. This is a great place to keep these things because from an internationalization perspective, I want to look at my next button string, E or S, and if I switch, I want to change everything. And you got to think about ways here. Is this really the best naming convention, or should I actually put the whole word English, Spanish? That might be the other thing to do, right? Because it might be confusing what's E and S means, right? So let's put English We can just rename them here. In Spanish. And the thing is, once I know this is my convention, French, right? I can always swap when I change my radio button, like I'm asking you to do in your assignment. You can go here from a string resources perspective and change the name. Okay, so let me see if I can do that first of all in design time, because that's the first piece I need to do. So I'm going to go back to the form for a second. And here's my design side. I'm going to go to properties, and where it says my text, so I'm going to go to my button. Sorry, click on my button, and I want to get my text where it says next, and see where it pulls down. There's a little pull down. Take a look. Right? I can also, it says next, but I want to programmatically access this resources here. You know, how do I, instead of hard coding the button that says next, I want to make it so that it says the stuff in English, right? I want to use that string that I just created, right? Well, let me go back to that picture for a second and see if I can get that image for a second, because remember I told you that image gives us a little bit of a hint on how to do things, right? So I've got this COMP123 lesson 10 part 2 properties.resources, right, .welcome _ large, right? So maybe I can do something the same, right? I mean, I can start putting in here, and again, if you do these little ellipses, you can actually choose other images, right, as opposed to in your resource file. Now, if you don't know how to do it, and you know, I'm guessing you probably don't know, you go to MSDN and you search for it. You say assign string resource, let's say, to button Visual Studio, Windows Form. Lots of information, right? And let's see what it says. Walk through localizing Windows Forms. Localization or internationalization is what we're trying to do here. And I think from a UI perspective, it's super important these days. Other professors may not touch upon it, but the thing is, I've noticed in my times that, especially here in Canada, where we have, you know, we're supposed to be bilingual, you know, English, French, then it's really, really important that we include the options for us to switch different languages, right? And if you're working in another country as well, you may want to, this is for 2010, but I'm sure it's the same. So what does it say? It says create a new Windows application in Windows Application 1. Use the properties window to set the form's localizable property to true. Okay. The language property is already set to default. Drag a button. Set the form's language properties to German. Okay, cool. Set the button's text property to hello Welt. Wait, what is it? Hello Welt, like as in hello world. Set the form's language property to French, and set the button's text property to Bonjour le monde, right? You can resize the button to accommodate a larger string. This is the way to do it. And then save and build the solution. Click Show Files. This is one way of definitely doing it. But what if I want to use the strings? I want to do internationalization. But when I want to use this, I want to do it through like programming, right? I want to access the properties or the resources through programming. So this isn't quite what I wanted. But see where this is my resource file name, and then it says string message, right? And look what it says. WinForm strings .de -de res x and French, right? For my name is a string message, and my value is Welt, hello Welt, or Bonjour le monde. So this actually might be a better way of doing things than us doing it manually like the way we did it, right? And again, if you notice, it says using system.resources must be in place, because if I don't access this stuff manually, I can't, if I don't see this, add this namespace, I can't access system resources. Okay, well, let's check to see, first of all, if our form has that thing. So I'm going to go back to my new form.cs, and I want to see if it has this using system resources. And right now, it don't have that. I got to add that in. I got to add this in if I want to access any system resources, including my images. Right, so let's put that in. So I know I need that, because I'm going to try and do that this time. System.resources. Right? See if that's enough. Okay, cool. And let's say, just in my new form, I'm just going to see if I have access to system.resources here. If I go resources, if I type resources, how about system.resources? So I have to type system.resources, system.resources dot. So let's see if I can find, how to do this manually myself. Resx, data node. There's also the resource set, the resource manager, resource reader, all this other stuff here, but it really doesn't give me what I want. So I may not be able to do it as easily as just using the system.resources. But let me just go back. So I'm going to go back to my my online stuff, right? It says I need to use the resource manager constructor, and it takes 2 arguments. The first is the root name of the resource, that is the name of the resource file without the culture and resx suffixes. And the second argument is the main assembly. Okay. And what that means, it would be something like resource manager is new resource manager. You're declaring a new resource manager. And then I'm going to look to see this Windows applications 1, whatever the name of the file is, Windows form, strings, and then it says, if I scroll to the right, type of form 1 assembly. Whoa, that's pretty crazy that I got to put all that in there to get my local resource. And then I can get my text welcome, or I can assign my screen that way. Must be another way, an easier way to do that, because what if I want to get change the picture image programmatically? Let's ask that, because it's kind of related, right? So change image picture box, from resources. Here's one, C#. It's kind of the same idea, right, that I'm trying to do. Change picture box image to image from my resources. Okay, how do I do that? So go through here, and it says picture box.image and is equal to project.properties.resources. This is what I was looking for. Dodge my image from resource, right? Image from resource, whatever the image from resource is, right? So if you load the resource using the Visual Studio UI, then you should be able to do this. Project.properties.resource, but I'm guessing project might be the name of our file, our name of our project. Yeah.
We still need to use system resource.
I believe so. I would keep that definitely on. I'm pretty sure that if you want to use system resources, you might need that. I would leave that in there for now. Let's try this out. So let's go back. So I'm going to try it here. So I'm going to say, just like we did before. So the code is, and I'm just trying it at a random location. It may not be good in this context, though. I may have to change context. So I'm looking at my picture box.image. My picture box is called main picture box, right? So first of all, let's see if I can access main picture box from in here. Main picture box, right? Dot, and it says, let's go back to what it says here. And I'm checking one, and one most likely will affect the other, right? You'll see how it goes, because they're all related. So I'm using system resources. Dot image, okay, so that's the one I want to do. And this is a great way of doing stuff. So here's my image, right, is equal to, now unfortunately Microsoft doesn't give you any code hinting, but look what it does do. It says if I put this up, if I use my control space button, right, then it gives you some other options, and it says it's giving me back to main picture box, but it's also giving me some other options here that I can do, like mouse position, all these other things. I'm not sure that anything of these really apply, but what if I start typing resources? Does that help me out? It says resource manager, that comes up, so that's an option, and let's see if that is actually where I have to go. So it says properties.resources.whatever, right? So properties.resources, project properties. What if I just type properties by itself? Because I don't have to type project.properties. So say, so resources, say properties.resources. And I look through here and I see there's the next string English. Look, here's the next button, string Spanish. Hey, this is the way to do this, man. And I got my reference equals, a resource manager, and my welcome large. Dude, this is the way. Welcome large, right? So that would be the name of my resource, because each of my resources has a name, right? So if I go back to if this is the way to do it, now we've accessed that resources, and this is the only way, by the way. You can't load files in other ways or anything weird like this. It'll mess up, right? So let's go back to our COMP123, and I see I've named these resources, and I can access them with this name. If I go back to, instead of strings, if I look at images, our resource is named welcome large. I could rename that, to make it whatever I want. And when I import it, I could rename the resource. But I wouldn't, I mean, I could do it here. Sometimes it doesn't cascade, so I would be careful of this. And also, it's an important thing to do to, when you have a resource that you want to import, that you want to rename the resource that you want to import ahead of time to what you want. In other words, welcome large may have not been the right name for me to import it. When I downloaded the image, I should have renamed the image before I imported it into my resources. That's the proper sequence, because that way what it does is it does less work for us later on if I want to make a name that makes sense. Okay, so welcome large, definitely a name, and one of them I want to use. But this means that this pattern, this is why I was telling you, if you follow one pattern, properties.resources.whatever is the pattern that we're going to use to assign images and text to our next button. So properties.resources.whatever, right? Well, now let's see in design time, if I go properties.resources. Inside of my design time. Is that possible? I'm just going to erase this. I'm going to go to new form. I'm going to click on next. And right from the beginning, I want to go in here and I want to say, here's my next. And instead of a pull down, I'm going to start typing properties.resources, right? Doesn't give me any kind of code hinting, right? And if I actually look through here, right? Or if I try and do that, it just tries to fill in the text value. So that's not really the way to do it. So what I put in there, right? So my recommendation is you leave the next in there the way it was. Okay, so this is not the way. And by the way, if you scroll down here, it gives you some options. Like for example, I can put next, and I can put all the Spanish, French, different versions in here in the pull down, right? This doesn't really do much for me. So I'll leave it as next. And now for the first time, when I click my form, I want to double click my form to create an event handler on my form. Let's try this out. So I'm going to double click. When I do that, it creates this new form load. So when the form loads, I want to assign my next button to this resource. Okay? So let's try this out. I'll say my next button, right, dot text, right, is equal to properties dot resources dot next button string English. See if that's possible, right? So this will change my string to English on load. When my form loads, now this is a new event that we haven't tried before. The form is loading. Once the form loads up, boom, it changes my string of my text button to this string we've created in our resources. Internationalization, right? So let's go back to our properties if that's the case. And instead of next, just for a test for us, for ourselves, let's change this from next to like undefined. Just something else, right? Or maybe, something that even doesn't take up the word right now. All right, just bear with me here. And if I run this thing, we should get, if I'm right, on load, it should change to next. Let's see. Bam. Right? So I'm accessing the string that I created from an internationalization perspective on load. It changes my string from this, undefined, this is what I did in design time, to next. Well, that means that I could do the same thing. If I change this back to next, right? So instead of undefined, let's change it back to next as another test, right? And if I go back to my form, and in here, instead of next button string English, we know what that is, I'm going to say next button string Spanish, right? Because we want to take that property on, right? And then let's run this thing. And then there it is. Now, does it fit? So what I need to do is I need to test it to the longest word that's going to be in there. Because when you do your little radio button for your assignment number 6, right? You want to make sure that all the buttons are pre-sized to fit the string, right? That's the proper way to do things. So we know I need to make this a little bigger. How much bigger do I need to make it? Well, smart thing to do is to go back into your resources, go back into strings, right? And take the value that I want, which is this, right? The longest value for my button, right? Go back into new form design, and inside here, inside next, I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to go back down here to where it says the text property and drop in my option. So here's my option. I know this is not big enough. I'm going to make this bigger so it fits exactly big. Give it a little bit of padding, right? And move my button so it's in the middle of my screen, wherever I want it, right? Wherever I want the button. Restate the button in the middle somewhere. Okay, so now this is the middle. My button's positioned correctly, and the name is going to fit. So now I can put in my default value, which is going to be next, right? Because that's my default value. And whenever I want to switch it, as an example, I can switch it from next to the Spanish version, right? So if I unload, now it's going to work nice, right? It still says the same thing. It just says it in Spanish. Cool, cool. Resources. Okay, let's do one more thing now. Let's download another image, another welcome image, and on next, I want to swap the image from one to the other, right? Now there's a couple of methodologies here. If I only have two images and I want to toggle them, right, then I can do what I did already. I can create an if statement and blah, 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 and I can go next, next, next. But what if I have, I don't know how many images I have in my set, and I want to go to the next image, next image, next image. And then when it goes to the end, I want to start from the beginning again. Now it speaks to me of an array, right? I know, arrays. You might say, I hate arrays. Tom, I hate them, right? But I got to make an image array. It's an array of images now, and it's got to be an array of image resources, special kind of array, right? That holds image resources. I can't just hold, whatever I want, because in C# you have to be very specific. Okay, so let's do that. Let's add a couple more images. So let's say instead of one, we'll say two more, right? And we'll still get these welcome images back. So I'm going to go back to welcome image, and I'll go click another one with a different size, right? So we'll try this one out too. So this will get the next one. And this one would be just in the same image set where it says welcome with the flower, right? So I'm going to right click, save link as, save image as, right? And I'm going to put it on my desktop again just to make it simple for myself. And now it says welcome large, huh? I would recommend, and it's going to be a blue welcome, blue underscore welcome, so we know what it is, .jpg, because that's what it is, right? A blue welcome. Okay, let's do one more. So we're going to click on the pebbles, right? The rocks. I like the rocks, right? And oh man, I've got this little crap down here, and it's like these little swirls. I don't like that. Let's go to the next one. Okay, the welcome mat. There we go. Welcome mat, right? Right click on the welcome mat, save image as, and it says images.jpg. That's definitely not cool for a name. So I'm going to change this to like welcome mat, because I know what it is. Now, if you notice, there's some different naming conventions we're using here, but I'm using the underscore, right? Okay, cool. There's my welcome mat. I got a few images now. Let's load these as resources. Okay, I'm going to do that instead of loading it through here, right, through this image, because this is going to scale all my images the way I want them, right? Let's go to the resources now. Instead of using here on the top right, where it says, on the top left, where actually you see strings, I'm going to change this resources to show images. And by the way, if you notice, there's images, icons, audio, files, all kinds of other resources you can choose, right? Let's choose images. So now it shows me this one, right? And I want to kind of import a new one, right? How do I add another image resource? Well, a couple ways to do that. I'm just going to resize here. One of my favorite ways, if this is the proper way to do it, is drag and drop, right? I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to find my images that I want to show. Here's my blue welcome. I'm going to just drag and drop it on here and see if it kind of does anything. Yeah, there it is, blue welcome. And then I'm going to drag and drop my welcome mat. I'm going to drag and drop that over here too. Oh, okay, there's my welcome mat. So I kind of drag and drop these images in there, right? So I've got these three things, and if you notice, they're all named already. Welcome mat, blue welcome, welcome large, right? Let's try and change. I'm going to save this, by the way, save everything. I'm going to go back to my new form design side, and I'm going to see if I can swap out my image to test out what it's going to look like if I go to a different one. So instead of this one, I'm going to choose my image, and it's going to pull up, here's all my properties I can choose, right? I can choose my blue welcome, which is really big, or my welcome mat. Choose the welcome mat. So welcome mat nicely fits, right? Because why? We still have the zoom mode on, so it'll fit any image, even if I choose the other one. My blue welcome is really big, but if I put it in here, now it shows up, right? Because I'm using the zoom option. So any image I swap in there will nicely swap, and it won't like take up too much space, right? Okay, cool. So now what I want to do, let's go back to the original image. I want to start off with my first image, which is, I want to go to choose image. I'm going to go to my welcome large, which I don't know why we called it that, but let's just leave it alone. And what I want to do is on next, I want to swap images to the next image. Couple options here. But the best option probably would be to make an array, right? Where should the array be held? If I want it to be accessible to me at any point in my form, where should the array be held in my code? Here's my code. Where should I put it? Think about this as a class, like normal. Well, it would be inside my class as a property, right in here. Oops. Inside the curly braces, right? Just like we make any other class. This is all the same stuff, right? Look, here's my constructor. If you don't believe what it is, this new form constructor, this is my initial constructor. You can make multiple constructors for your form. We already know this stuff, guys. Right? Here's my constructor. I'm gonna kind of do a little bit more for forms, right? Okay, cool. And in my constructor, right, I have this new form 1, and what does it do? It kind of calls up this built-in method that's been inherited from the form superclass, right? It's called initialized component, right? And remember also, there's this partial keyword here in front of our class, which means part of our class is defined here, and part of our class with partials, part of our class is defined somewhere else in the design side. Remember, there's two documents. There's design document you can't see, you don't want to touch, and there's this side, which is the one you actually add code to. Well, this is why we have partial classes. We can define our entire class and split it up among different files, sometimes to avoid the files being too large, right? We do that for that reason as well. One from a visibility and a perspective, and the other reason why is sometimes you want to add to the class. Like let's say you're working with a partner from a collaboration perspective, and one person wants to build the class, and the other person wants to work on the class. Well, you make it a partial, and they can work on the class at the same time as you're working on it, but they're adding additional features to it, and they're not impacting you, right? But anyways, for now, let's look at it like this. We have our new form load, which I've kind of enacted, and I've got this. It changes the button to Spanish for now. I'm going to take this away because that's not what I want, right? And what I want to do up here is inside, above my constructor, I want to create my new properties, right? Now remember, I want to make it so it's private instance variables, public properties, right? That's the way I want to do it. And remember the shortcut. What's the shortcut for creating a property with our code snippets? Well, it's prop. So I go prop dash dash or tab tab. It creates my public property, right? Let me go back. If I go prop a dash dash, right? What it does is it doesn't only create my property, it creates a static property, right? One of them that's a different kind of object. Okay, so be careful. So now undo this, right? If I go, and if you notice, if I start typing prop, there's different ones. Prop A, prop DP, and there's also properties. If I go prop DP and I hover over it, right, it says define a dependency property. I don't want that. Prop A, it says define an attached dependency property. I don't want that. So this would be the best one if I wanted to double click and do it. The only thing is it doesn't really give me for prop just by prop itself. If I tab, it doesn't really give me, this is just the public getter and setter for, let's say, my private instance variable. All right, so I want to do something like this, but what I want to do is first create my instance variable. And now, is my instance variable going to be public or private? Private, right? So that's my first thing. So I'm going to start writing here, just like we do on any other class. And I'm going to call this my image array, right? Because that's what I want. It's an image array. So let's just call it image array. So it's going to be underscore because it's private. That's our way of doing it. Oh, by the way, first of all, we have to say what kind of array it is, right? Here's the trick. Do we make it a string? No. Do we make it a resource of some kind? Can we do that? Like a resource array, almost like a resource or a properties. You know, can we make it a properties.resources array? Can I do that? Right? I don't know if it's possible. I'm guessing, right? Private properties.resources, and I want to say the name of my array, which is an image array. I'm going to call underscore image array. And I should call it an image array, right? So we know what it is, right? And I'm defining it here, right? But I'm not actually creating it yet. If I go new, I have to use the same kind of thing, properties resources. It actually gives me the option, properties resources, and I have to say how big my array is going to be. Right now, let's make it an array of 10. I don't need that many, but I'm going to make it bigger. Oops, 10. So I can hold 10 images maximum. It works. It looks like it's good. Like the code looks like it's okay. I guessed, right? Because it has to be, the array is a container that's going to hold different objects. It doesn't just hold strings. It can hold whatever you put into it, which means, but I got to make the shape of each container in the array. Each element has to be the right shape for me to hold other objects, right? So if I want to make multiple images, I've got to make my array stretch to fit the image, which means I got to define each element of the array as a properties resources type of data. That's what I'm doing, right? Okay, if I'm right. Let's see if I'm right, first of all. And here's on new form load, right? Let's leave this new form load, by the way, we're going to wipe away in a second. I wanted to put it there so we can, for testing, yeah.
Does that also mean you can add because in our resource menu we also have that string section. Does that mean you can add pictures and strings?
Yeah.
To the same array?
No.
All part of the property resource?
Probably. I wonder if I have to go one step further and define it as images. Don't know yet, right? Because I don't know if this is enough. If I have to go one level further. And we're going to check online on SDN to find out if this is even possible, right? Because it might crash. Let's take a look. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say my image array on load, my image array then, and I'll make the first object of my image array, right? I want to load it up with something, right? So I'm going to say properties dot resources, right? And I'm going to say dot, and I want to put the blue welcome in there, right? So let's just do that. Let's not assign it anything. Let's just like take the property. Oh wait. Oh, see, it's giving us a problem. This is good. This is good. This code hinting here. I'm gonna make this a little larger for you guys to see what I'm doing. Those code hinting that I'm getting from Microsoft is telling me that my image array, even though it's holding these properties resources, is not the right kind of array, the container to hold this blue welcome. Let's see what it says. It says, cannot implicitly convert type system drawing bitmap to COMP123 lesson 10 part 2 properties resources. Hey, give me a hint. System.drawing.bitmap. Maybe I have to make it like that instead of my properties, because that seems to be compatible with the type that I'm getting. System.drawing.bitmap. So if I know that I'm already got my system namespace in there and drawing, that means maybe I only have to do bitmap, a bitmap array. That's interesting. So let's change this up. So I'm going to say up here, instead of where it says private properties resources, I'm going to change this to a bitmap array. I can do that, which means I'm going to make a new bitmap array, right, of 10. And now we're good. I'm using my code hinting to help me build and code. I don't know exactly how it's done. And by the way, I work with many, many languages. So for you to try and remember everything is absolutely impossible. Doesn't matter how good of a developer you are, right? You want to try and use the code hinting in the online documentation, the API documentation, as much as possible to make sure you do what you need to do, right? It's not cheating. We need to know, because unless you work with this stuff every single day, right, you won't remember. Okay, so this is cool. If this is cool, I want to use this image array 0, this first image array. I want to load this, to test it, into my picture box. I'm going to say onload. I'm going to say main picture box, right, is dot image. I got to specify the property, is equal to underscore image array, right? And by the way, let me just go back one step back, because I don't want to confuse you guys. I do want to use the this. Someone mentioned that yesterday, because we kind of want to use this as much as possible to say this private bitmap, right? And follow me here. We're going to change this up to use. I'm going to use a actual property, a public property, in a second. I'm going to make a public property for this thing. Okay, so let's go main picture box.image, and now we're going to go into my image array. So I'm going to say is equal to this underscore image array 0. Does this seem clear? Now this is, I could have just said main picture box.image is equal to this, right? But I wanted to store it in the array first, just to test it. Okay, let's run this thing and see what happens. If I'm right, this means that now we can cycle through the images. So when I click next, I cycle through from one image to the other, to the other, to the other. When I get to the end of my array, how do I know what's the end of my array? When my image, the index of my image equals the length, I check for the length of the array. I make an if statement. If it's the end, and if I've clicked next, go to the beginning. That's my next image, right? And I need to store a next image property somewhere, private property that I'm going to be accessing, so I know when my program is working, it's going to keep track of what the next image is going to be every time I'm going, right? Because I can't just keep going next, 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 next. I got to go to the next image. Okay, cool. This is good. Okay, so I've got this going. I know I can do this, which means if I want to do, instead of my image array, and again, I could do a string array. My string array, right, for internationalization, I can include all my strings in there. Now the challenge with that is, I'm just saying, right, that I don't know which one I'm going to swap to. If I only have 2 languages, it might be just better to swap to like an if statement. If I have more than 2 languages, like 2, 3 languages, then it might be a smarter thing to do just to use, maybe certain names. And in other words, I would kind of use an enumeration, an enum, with all the different properties, so to swap into different indexes. I'm just going to say it that way. I'm not going to show you how to do it because, I'm going to confuse the crap out of everybody. But anyways, that's what I would do. So for now, though, let's keep with this going. I've got this image array. Now, I want to do a couple things. On load, whenever I load, I'm going to keep this function, but I want to create a for loop to initialize my array, right? And I want to do it so it's dynamic. Well, actually, let's do it so it's not dynamic first. I'll do it so that I know how many images I have. I have 3 images, and I'm going to go through the image, the resources, and what I'm going to do, because I believe the image resources already has a built-in number. I can check to see how many resources I have, image resources I have. There must be a way of checking. If I think that it exists, I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to go to here. I'm going to say check number of image resources, C# Windows form. I'm going to try and search for something like that. This is code. Retrieving an image that is an embedded resource. Practical tips for boosting performance of Windows. Image list class. But this is a collection we haven't talked about before. So, again, it tells us how to do it, I'm sure. But do I want to show you this stuff? Let's take a look. Yeah, see, this is a public sealed class image list component. And then I can go through it, and it tells me some methods, but that's not really what I'm looking for. So to make it easy, remember, I always want to look at the easy way of doing things. I'm a lazy guy. I want to make it easy. Load image from resources area of project in C#. Well, it's kind of what we did already. But I want to make it so I can kind of go through. Look, it casts it as a bitmap already too. My image, but I don't think it keeps track of how many images I have, which is kind of bad, right? There must be a way of knowing how many images I have. So, how many images in resources, C# Windows form, right? Embedded image resources in a project, code retrieving an image that's embedded resource, how to add some images to resources and can be used in a form. There must be a way to do it. How to get the image path from the resource file, we know what that is. Windows Forms image list, I don't want to use that. Forms programming in C#. So I don't see anything immediately that comes up. So for now, when you run into this kind of problem, I would move on and don't linger. Like, I'm not going to linger. I'm just going to create a new initialization though. I'm going to call some kind of initialization method that I'm going to create here, right? Now, first of all, I need a couple things. I need in my private bitmap image array, I want to make this so that there's a public accessor method that I use for reading and writing to this thing, just in case I want to, because right now it's all private. If I never want to use a public accessor method, I never have to create one. So that right now, outside of this form, you can't access the images, right? Which isn't a bad thing. But if I wanted to, I could create a public, kind of resource. And if I don't remember how to do that, I can always go property. And instead of my string being a property, of course, it would be a bitmap array. That's what my bitmap array. And my property wouldn't be called property. It would be called image array with a capital I, right? Because that's what I'm trying to do here. And then, of course, I have my getters and my setters, which are two functions of their own. Here's my getters and setter functions. Remember how my getters and setter function looks. They look like this. So getter, right? And my getter, if you notice, it says not all code paths return a value, which means I have to have I don't need this semicolon now. I need to have a return statement in here that returns this dot image array. That's what it does, right? I want to return the image array when I kind of go in there. So I want to return the image array, but that doesn't really, I mean, for an array, to create an array that's a public or private resource, well, here's a problem. I'm returning a reference to the array because an array, if you remember different types, strings, integers, decimals, floats, doubles, they're all value types. And arrays are reference types, right? So when I do this, I'm actually returning a reference, a pointer to the array, right? Well, if I do that, right, then I might as well just make this public, because that's what I'm doing when I do this. So I'm making it a reference. It's not a copy anymore, right? It's a reference to my array. So this is where I wouldn't need this property, right? It doesn't make any sense. Properties, private instance variables, public properties are in place for value types. But for reference types, there's no point, right? Because you have access to it anyway. Once I send a reference type into a method, I can access every option, every element of that method, of that reference type. And an array, my friends, is a reference type. So that's why I wouldn't do this. I wanted to mention it because normally we do private instance variables, public properties. But from an array, it makes no sense. Let's leave it off. One thing I do want to mention from a commenting perspective, and I'll stop recording in a second when I finish this part. I'll say this is a private instance variables, because they're still variables. Even though it's an array and it's a reference type, I can still call it an instance variable. Here's my constructor. And let me just unpin this for a second. Here's my constructor, and inside my constructor, right, if you notice when the new form kicks off, when it's created, my new form is created, I could do it here as well, right? But what I really want to do is any kind of initialization, I got to choose where I want it to happen. Do I want it to happen when the form loads, or do I want it to happen when my new form is created, right? My guess is I want my new form to load so that I have access to all my resources, right? So I would kind of create another private method, right? And I'm going to call this method image array initialize, or initialize image array. Right? This is what this is going to do, this method. And it's going to return void, because it's not going to really return a value, this method, right? And this method I'm going to use to cycle through my array, right? And right now I'm going to make it so that I'm going to cycle through 3 times, right? So I'm going to go, I'm going to do a for loop, right? And I just use tab there for a second. And I'm going to call this I'll call this index instead of just I, right? So index, here's my index. And I want to cycle through so that it's less than, well, the length of my array. I only have 3 images right now. So let's put a hard-coded value of 3, right, for now. We can change this later on and make it so it's not hard-coded anymore. We can think of different ways of cycling through. All right, and then I want to say something like this. Here's this image array. Because I got to do this. First I got to load up my array with all the images first, right? And then I can access each image of each one of the images in a sequence. So here's this image array, right? So I need that piece, and I got to say, instead of 0, right, I want to say index, because the index is going to be my little temporary variable called index, right? So this image array index, right, is equal to something like this: properties.resources.bluewelcome. That's what I'm saying. I got to do this individually. Can I even do this thing, right? Can I even load them up individually? Well, let's see if I have another option for my resources. If I back up here, I don't really. I have culture. I have equals. I have refresh. Yes.
Could you declare them at the top when you make the array?
I could. That's another way of doing it. That's another way of doing it, and that's actually a very good solution because but it's a fixed number, right? So I can't do that anywhere else. I can't do that in here. Once I declare my array, though, where I say bitmap 10, I could do something like this. Instead of doing this, I could just remove these, and I could do something like this. In brackets, literal notation, right? I could do this, properties dot resources, and then I can choose my images. My first one would be my welcome large, right? My second one will be properties dot resources dot images. My blue welcome. Let's say make that the second one, and then properties dot images. My resources dot my welcome mat. Those are my three. So I know I have these three. I don't have to size my array. It's going to be 3, right? And everything is initialized right here. So that's definitely one way of initializing the array. So Neo, that's a very good way of doing it, right? Here's the challenge. If I ever want to reinitialize my array again, can't do that, right? I have to do it manually. But if I'm going to do this and I can't cycle through, there's no resources array that's built in, and I believe there is, by the way. There's a way of accessing all my resources. Yes?
How many do you have to do features?
How about if you have? That's the thing. How do we cycle through each of the resources, right, without going through, so there must be some kind of resource array. So again, I'll challenge you guys. Here's a challenge for today. Look up online, is there some kind of resource array that I can cycle through, right? Because remember, is it only all bitmap resources? Is it all resources? So images, strings, blah, blah, because it looks like it is. It's just an accessor method that I'm using to access my resources. How do I access the resources in my path, my properties, right? For now, let's leave it as is, because this is a small little example. And let's get rid of this thing, because I don't need this anymore because of Neil. Neil made a good solution, right? So now I've done this, all right? And now on new form load, I don't have to do this anymore because I've already assigned it up top. And let's just check this to make sure that it works like we're thinking it does. On new form load, I want to load the first image up. All right. Well, this is a fixed image, so I'm just going to check my changes to make sure it works. So bam, there's my first image. That's cool. I need to keep track of my image index though, right? So that's got to be some kind of private variable as well. So I'm going to say private, and I'm not going to make an accessor method for this one, right? It's going to be called, it's going to be an integer, right? And it's going to be image index, right? And I'm going to set this one when we kick it off to 0. So the first index is going to be the first one it's going to be. So now instead of image array here, I'm going to set this up to image index, right? Why? Because this is going to be my way of cycling through, as you'll see in a second. All right. So it starts off with image index, which is 0. Let's try this now. There it is. Okay, well now when I press my next button, well, if I want to press my next button, do anything, I got to double click on next, right? So let's do that. Double click on next. I create a new event handler, right? So I can access my next button. So this is my event handler for my next button and the click event. Right now you can do this anyway. This is an event handler too, right? Event handler for my form load, or for my form, and it's the form load event, right? So when the form loads, this kicks off. When I click my next button, I want to cycle to my next image, right? So I want to say this. I'm going to say when it's clicked, if I'm going to check to see if my this dot this dot image index. Here's my image. I forgot to put this in here, man. Come on, this is bad, Tom. I'm trying to teach you guys the right way. This dot image index in here. This dot image index, right? If this dot image index is greater than 3, right, or less than 3, right? Right? So it's 0, 1, 2. If it's less than 3, then I want to use my image index to load the index. the image, right? So I'm going to say this. I'm going to pull it up here for you guys to see this part, right? So I'm going to say this dot image array, right? Here it is. And then this dot image index, right, is equal to the new, actually I want this part here to load my picture box, sorry, so I want it to be the other way around. My picture box, which is the main picture box, is equal to, or the image of the main picture box is equal to this dot image array, this dot image index, if it's less than 3. Because I know, now I could say that this, if it's less than the array length, right? Because we don't know how many array elements we have, to your point, right? So we can say, if this dot image index is less than the array length, right? Which is this dot image array, right? Dot the length property, right? If it's less than the array length, then load up the image into the picture box. That's what this is saying. Whew. Complicated little things, right? Okay, now, but if it's not, if it's something else, if it's greater than, right, or equal to, right, then what I want to do is do things. I want to say else, then I want to change my this dot image index, right, to equal to 0, right? Because then I'm going to put the pointer back to the front again, right? So it's going to go, and then it's going to put the the pointer to the front. Cool. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to say main picture box blah blah blah. Oh, I'm going to do the same thing. So if that's true, then this shouldn't belong here. It should belong down here. And then I want to set this dot image array, my image index, to ++, right? I want to increase my image index. So what I'm saying is, I start off at 0. When I come here, right, I'm going to go to 1, right? And then I come down here, check to see if it's greater. I'm going to go to 2. Check to see if it's greater. I'm going to go to 3. 3 is, you know what, for the next one, 3 is bigger. I'm going to set my image index to 0 again. All right? So every time I click this button, it's going to change my picture to the next image, almost like an image carousel. All right? Okay, cool. Let's press the start button and see if this thing works. If I've coded it correctly, if I click this next button, it'll cycle through. And when I click past this part, it'll go to the front. Oh man, I have a problem. I went to the end, and it said that this image index is equal to 3. Well, it should never have done that, right? Because did I do this wrong, right? If it's less, then I went there and I increased it. If it's less than 3, I go to the next one, right? Is my thinking wrong? Go to 0, else, am I checking wrong, right? What do I really want to say? If this image index is basically less than this image array length -1, right? Then, as long as it's true, I want to increase this by 1. Otherwise, I want to make it 0. If I go to -1, right? That means that in here, the way I've coded it, right? What I'm saying is, because this one here, -1, image array length is 3, right? But I can't do 3 because I only have 0, 1, 2, right? So I never can go to 3. So because I've got a 0 array-based index arrays for all SUI influenced languages. I got to go to the previous index. I never can go farther than that. So let's rerun this thing. Let's see if it works now. Close this, run this, right? And let's see if we go to the next one. Okay, this is cool. I got my next button. All right, and let's stop recording from now, and we'll go to the next piece.